immunology. Okay, and basically we know that your mental outlook, your mental activity will influence the way your neurological, endocrinological, and immunological systems work. A good example of that is you can take two individuals, one that just loves roller coasters. I mean, he'd ride a roller coaster all day long. There's not much more happy in life, okay? And then the other spectrum is that guy who just dreads roller coaster, won't get on it for anything.
Right.
Well, if you took those two individuals and you put them in a car and you drove them to a Six Flags parking lot, and before you took the trip, you measured their blood, and you found out what their blood levels were, their gases, their endorphin levels, those sorts of things, you'd get a baseline reading. You took them to the Six Flags parking lot, and you got out of the car and you pointed at the roller coaster and you said, "You're going to ride that roller coaster." And then checked those two people's blood, you'd find changes in their blood from the baseline you took before you took the car ride.
The one that's excited?
The ones that excited, boy, he'd have an increased oxygen level in his blood. He'd have an increased endorphin level. Boy, he'd just be charged up and ready to go. And meanwhile, the gentleman who is dreading the ride, okay, you'd find an increase in all the stress responses, an increase in cortisol, an increase of white blood cell production. Okay, so there would be a real measurable physical difference from an attitude.
Well, the Bible says, "A merry heart doeth good like a medicine."
Right.
Sometimes you can't affect your surroundings always, but
Right.
you can affect how you respond to those surroundings.
Affect the way, I'm not talking about speaking yourself well necessarily.
Right.
Okay, but the attitude of first of all, thankfulness. One, that we've got a breath. I mean, you wake up in the morning and you've got a breath. You should be thankful.
Right.
That is a gift of God.
Sure.
Because it's not going to happen. It's not going to. He is sustaining his entire universe. If it is alive, he is sustaining its life. And if it is in a non-living state, he is the one that is sustaining that non-living state. So we have to keep the proper mental attitude. Another area of our body that we have to keep balanced, and that's the chemical aspect of our life. Okay, we are made up of atoms and molecules. Atoms and molecules are the building blocks, the Legos or the tinker toys, depending on the generation you come from. Okay, that God used to make his creation. Okay, and basically he used the same building blocks to make everything.
Right.
He just arranged them in a little bit different order. Okay, and gave them a little bit different functions. But the molecules themselves, they have no awareness. I've said that molecules are stupid.
Right.
They never contemplate the results or the consequences of their actions. When you take in a substance, I don't care if it's a naturally occurring or a synthetically produced substance, when you take it in, that molecule and atom is simply looking for a place to react and to bond. It doesn't care if it's the right place, the wrong place, beneficial or detrimental to the organism. Okay, molecules have to be controlled and coordinated.
Right.
Okay, and that's what God does for us. Okay, through His power in a living state. Okay, molecules in non-living states, okay, are directed by the laws of thermodynamics, the laws that govern the universe. I know you talk a lot about.
It's all falling apart.
Right, it's all falling apart. It's moving to randomness and chaos. Okay, it takes intelligence. Okay, it takes a controlling and coordinating power in order to maintain those molecules and atoms in an organized fashion. When you remove that source of organization or power, then everything falls down. One way I like to illustrate that is that one moment we are alive, and the next moment we're dead. But we have the very same molecules.
Right.
As a matter of fact, our molecules keep on doing. They keep on doing what they are known to do.
Only now it's
destructive.
destructive.
Now it's destructive. It's chaos and it's random. And that's why the tissues break down and we decay. Okay, so, life is not about the molecules. And that's where the bumblebee part of my lecture comes in.
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay, I'll tell you about the bumblebee.
Got the polar bear.
Okay, we got the polar bear. You see, there are different types of science logics. Okay, two dominant ones is first off mechanism. Okay, that is what most of today's science is based on. And mechanism, in a nutshell, says that if you take the biggest thing and you break it down into the little bittiest pieces, well, then that will explain how the big thing works.
That's fatally flawed.
Well, yeah, it is flawed. Okay. But, we have spent a lot of time looking for the secret to our life and to our existence in the molecules.
Sure.
Okay. But molecules have no intelligence. Okay. You cannot find the secret to life or the secret to the universe in the lowly atom.
Well, I don't want to interrupt your train of thought,
That's
but
okay.
an example. The airplane is made up of thousands of parts which cannot fly.
With thousands of parts which cannot fly.
You cannot study the parts and figure out how the airplane flies.
Exactly. Exactly. And you cannot study the parts, the atoms and the molecules of the human body and understand life.
Right. Very good. Okay.
Okay. Now there is another type of logic called vitalism. Okay. And vitalistic logic accepts the presence of a universal intelligence or an innate intelligence or a life force or an energy source. Now, these, once again, that's the atheistic, that's the world's definition. I know it's God, you know it's God.
Right.
Okay, but they accept the presence of a universal intelligence or an innate intelligence that is controlling and directing the activities of the atoms and the molecules.
Right.
Okay. Well, mechanistic science, to show the flaws of mechanistic science has proven that bumblebees can't fly.
The wings aren't big enough.
Wings aren't big enough, and body's too heavy. Okay.
Right.
Problem is they forgot to tell the bumblebee.
So they fly just fine.
They fly. I've run from them. They fly very good.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, faster than I can run.
Right.
Okay, so bumblebees disprove, if you will, mechanistic science as an explanation for life.
Sure.
Okay, there has to be a controlling force, a universal force, a life force, a God. Okay.
Well, I get atheists all the time that tell me, well, yeah, because I'll say the universe, everything's winding down, falling apart, second law of thermodynamics.
Right.
And they'll say, well, that's only in a closed system. If you add energy, it reverses entropy. And they say, see, the sun shines on the earth, that supplies energy, so that's how the earth is able to overcome the second law of thermodynamics. What they're not realizing is the sunlight energy is destructive unless there's something to organize it, like plants.
Plants, exactly.
Otherwise, it's destructive on everything else.
Right. There is, those radiations, those ion particles, okay, that bombard us. That's like shooting marbles into a marble game.
Right.
Okay. I mean, you throw something in there, it's going to scatter what's in there, not control and coordinate and organize what's in there. I use the analogy. I have Legos that I take around for talks that explain the molecules and the atoms and how they interact. And I was joking with my wife that I had to tape the lid down, okay, because if the lid popped open
on your Lego container,
if the lid popped open on my drive down here, those Legos would scatter.
They wouldn't organize.
They wouldn't organize themselves into anything. They just randomly fall through the car.
Well, and that's a pretty good analogy because the Lego is designed to snap into another Lego.
Just like the atoms are designed to fit together.
Right.
Okay.
But random shaking of these Legos is not going to produce the desired result.
No, not at all. Randomness is not an efficient means to build anything.
Every time I've done lots of handyman work, remodeling, construction type stuff, and I marvel how anybody can believe in evolution because nothing gets better by itself.
One of the biggest stumbling blocks for evolution and mechanistic science is the process of morphogenesis. And so that's a stumbling block that you can always stump them.
Right.
How can you explain morphogenesis? Okay. Morphogenesis is the construction of life in a living organism out of nothing. Okay, and the best analogy I can find for it is a vacant lot. Imagine if you could a vacant lot, okay, and then suddenly nobody put them there, just kind of magically pieces of a house. The lumber, the nails, the shingles, the plumbing, the wiring, all the pieces appeared on the lot. Okay, in a big old heap of pow. Okay. First off, that would take, that's a miracle in itself. I can't even imagine the number of billions of years, okay, that would be necessary for all these pieces to fall into place.
Sure.
Especially with nobody doing it.
Right.
And on the big scale, it's a lot like if you were flying in an airplane, okay, over the United States, and you had a 2x4 in your hand, and you threw it out the window, and it landed on that lot. Okay, that's just the randomness and the haphazard nature at which all these things had to get in the same place in the first time. Okay. But anyway, so miraculously, all the pieces at least show up in the right place.
Okay.
Okay. That's a stretch in and of itself.
Sure.
But then, all the pieces start to properly line themselves up. And 2x4A lines up with 2x4B.
And the nails.
And the nails come along and drive themselves in.
Right.
And everything that was in between A and B got out of the way.
Sure.
Okay, and the right nail and the right length found the right spot and held them together.
Of course, there's zero chance of that.
It's an absolute zero chance.
Yeah.
And then one board after another following that process, and then the screws and the wiring and the plumbing and all the things that go into building a house just accidentally, on their own, lining themselves up and building a house. Okay, that's what morphogenesis is. Okay, and once again, I don't know how many billions of years